Hey everyone, it's Shari Steele from Radar 8, GMB consultant, and I'm joined today by Sarah, who's going to be assisting me in this presentation. Welcome to the webinar. Today we're going to go over some steps to help you polish your doctor's online presence on Google My Business. Just a little housekeeping. I know you'll probably have some questions as we go along, so please use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen, and at the end of the presentation, we'll be going through your questions and hopefully answering all of the things that you'd like to know. Great. So just a recap on what we're going to be covering. We're going to be going through how to claim and create your listings, how to optimize your listings so that they look great on Google search, how to load photos on your Google My Business listings, and then reviews and posts, how to really actively engage with your patients using your listing. And lastly, how to measure the success of your Google listings using GMB Google Insights. So just, I guess, a little bit of a background just in case, to make sure we're all on the same page about what a Google listing is. When you type in search, and Sarah, I'd like to just actually go onto my search screen. So if you can
stop and allow you now to share your screen so you can show everybody.
Okay, great, great. Great, do you see my screen yet?
Mm-hmm.
Sarah, do you see my screen?
No, you have to go to share screen at the bottom.
Okay, hang on.
Select the window that you pulled up.
Yep, okay. Great, terrific. So just to make sure we're all on the same page, the Google listing appears when you do a search. So let's do a direct search. We're going to type in the name of a doctor. Okay, so this is going to directly search, and the Google listing is going to pull up on the right-hand side. So you can see the picture, the doctor's name, and lots of information that we're going to go over in a moment. This Google listing also comes up on the Maps view. So if I click on Maps, you'll see the listing, and it also comes up on the left-hand side, nice and big, with all the relevant information. So let's go back and do a discovery search. And a discovery search is basically when you're looking for a kind of business, right? So it might be a typical kind of practice, such as pediatric ophthalmologist, New York City. So here we have what Google calls a 3-pack. And basically, using your search terms, Google is trying to find listings that best match your search. So it's going to pull up 3 listings, a 3-pack, and then of course you can click on more places and Google will provide more listings for you to look at. So the listings will show up here in abbreviated fashion, and then of course you can always choose to click on them, and then it will bring up the full Google listing. Okay, great. So, whoops, let's go back. Okay, Sarah, you want to pull back up the presentation?
Just end your screen share and then I can pull mine back up.
Yep, yep, there we go.
All right, here we go. And I'm just going to represent it. There you go. All right.
Okay, so now that we all know what a Google listing is, let's talk about why Google listings are so important and why we're focusing on optimizing them. The Google listing is really your billboard. Think of it as a billboard that you're passing on the side of the road, and it's really the first time that a patient may interact with your practice or your doctors. So it's really important to make sure that it's reflecting your branding and your image. Basically, you want to make sure that your listing has great reviews. So we're looking at quantity of reviews, quality of reviews, and the recency of the reviews. that it has compelling images, such as a great picture of your physicians, a great picture of your building, your practice location. And then it also has clear and accurate information, such as links to your website, links to appointments, hours, and it has a bio that has lots of keywords that are going to help in building your SEO, your search engine optimization, as patients look for your listing. Okay.
All right.
So
this is my time, I think, to chime in just about the first step that you should take when dealing with your Google My Business listings. And that is to set up your GMB account in advance. So ideally, you should use an email address that has a proprietary practice domain name, like our example practice administrator here, John Smith at abcortho.com. But at Raider 8, we specifically recommend that you create an email address like GMB at abcortho.com, just as an example, which can be easily transferred and maintained within your practice. So you can set up that account at business.google.com. If you're like me, you may have multiple Gmail addresses saved as logins on your computer. So you'll want to ensure that anytime you work on your Google My Business listings, that you're always logged in under that designated GMB email address or practice email address. All too often we see administrators accidentally claiming listings under their personal email addresses, and that actually ends up living under a completely different GMB account. So that's the first thing you want to sort out. And I just wanted to show here that this is the GMB dashboard that you would be creating an account for and signing into. On the left upper hand side, you can see a landing page where it says manage locations at the top, and the listings are in alphabetical order below with their respective details. And then on the lower right hand corner, that's basically the view of a listing on the back end. So that's where you can access all the information, all of the edits that we're going to tell you about later on in this presentation. That's the landing page where all of that work happens. So I want to impress upon everybody that GMB listing optimization is first much more of an art than it is a science. Our recommendations are all in line with Google's best practices for doctors' offices. And in addition, we have a few tricks from just working on, I think now nearly 1,300 Google My Business listings through Raider 8's GMB services. So we create great looking listings that are accurate, consistent across your practice, and serve as an excellent first impression, like Sherry spoke about, to your prospective patients. And our ultimate goal in making these edits to the listings is to increase the search engine optimization of your listings. However, none of these edits are a guarantee of placement in Google search and how that all plays out. As Sherry showed you, there's a lot of ways that listings appear on Google search. So I just wanted to impart that on everybody right off of the bat, that the search results that do come up are much more of kind of a calculated, over time, learned tips and tricks that seem to work. It's technically an art and not a science. So here, my first point before you create and claim listings for your practice and your doctors is that you should have an idea of what listings already exist for your practice on Google. We won't dive too deeply into what this searching process should specifically be like, but it's important that you know what already exists before you create any new listings. You'll probably end up claiming the pre-existing listings on Google and then creating the listings that do not yet exist at all. So at the end of the day, most practices will do a mix of creating brand new listings and claiming the ones that are already there. Rate recommends, in accordance with Google's best practices for doctors' offices, that you set up one listing per office location, and then as many listings as needed for each provider at each location that he or she practices. And then with an exception for single doctor practices, where you would only need one listing with a hyphenated practice name and the doctor name. So this is just the best recommendations for how you should imagine your finished product as far as your Google My Business listings go. Having a fully fleshed out GMB presence leads to much greater visibility on search, provides patients with up-to-date information, and ensures that your prospective patients can see as many of those really great looking optimized listings as possible. So creating a listing is fairly straightforward from your Google My Business dashboard. I've laid out 3 steps here, but I'll show you on the dashboard now as well. So I'm just going to change that screen share for a moment, if I may. All right. Let me pull it up. Oh, no, not here. There you go. Okay. All right. Can you all see my new window, Sherry? Are you able to see my new window? Awesome. Okay. So this is just a blank Google My Business dashboard without any listings underneath it. You can see the same managed locations here at the top. In order to create a new listing, you would go to Add Location on the right-hand side, click Add Single Location, and then you would type in the name for your listing. So if it's a practice, you would say ABC Ortho. This is just one that happens to populate, but you want to create a business with that name. Make sure you're not selecting one from the drop-down list. And then you would proceed a few next buttons here to enter the information we'll talk about later for your listing. So that's it. It's very simple. Creating that listing is just that 3-step process to add something to your dashboard, to add a listing that does not yet exist on Google for your practice or for your doctors. Now I'm going to go back to the other window. Okay, can we see the presentation again? Awesome, okay. Now, claiming a pre-existing listing is a similar process, but slightly different. I can take you through screenshots though. So choose one listing to start with. Here's a fully optimized Google My Business listing from the search view that Sherry showed you earlier. You'll want to copy the name of the listing to your clipboard. This is important to avoid accidentally claiming listings under the wrong Google My Business login, because I think a lot of people just tend to click right on Own This Business, which I've also boxed in red, which is directly on the listing. However, as I mentioned with the saved logins on your browser, it's quite easy to mess up the claiming process by clicking directly on that link. So we recommend copying the name on the listing directly. Next, you would do the same thing, go to Add Location underneath your dashboard, add single location, type in the name, or paste it from your clipboard, and then you'll see that it populates because it's already existing on Google search. So at that point, you would select the listing from the drop-down menu instead of saying create a business with that name. From there, this is kind of the tricky part. Some listings are unclaimed, while others are already managed by another Google My Business account. So at this point, you'll be able to tell if the listing is unclaimed or claimed by the 2 screens I have pulled up here. On the left-hand side, that means you can manage the listing right away, make edits, verify, and complete the process. That's the easy version. The more tricky version is this right-hand side of the screen. It will display this type of notification in addition to a partially hidden email to help you figure out who the owner of the listing currently is. Partially hidden email addresses show the first 2 letters of the username and then only @gmail.com domains. So if it's a unique practice domain name or from a marketing agency, they'll hide the domain. Google will hide the domain as well. So if you happen to recognize that email address from this notification, you may be able to reach out to that person directly and they'll be able to give you access. However, if you aren't able to do that, go ahead and select request access at the bottom. Now, requesting access will bring you to this simple form. First, it's important to ask for ownership to gain complete control of the listing. So you'll want to make sure you select that option instead of management. Also, take note of the date when you request access. If the current owner doesn't respond to your request within 7 days, then Google actually allows you to acquire access to the listing anyway after that waiting period and require verification. So you'll notice on the Google My Business dashboard that a lot of the listings that you've claimed and created will begin to appear. The status of the listing can be found on the right-hand side of each one. And right off of the bat, you may have a mix of unverified and verified listings depending on if you were given access to them, or creating them, or gained access after that 7-day waiting period. We won't delve deeply into the verification process today, but we just wanted to let everybody know to be prepared for that verification process to potentially take a while. Verification occurs via postcard, which is a snail mail postcard sent to the listing's address to ensure that the listing is being created by the appropriate business owner. Due to various reasons, mail delivery, it sometimes takes several rounds of postcards to finally receive it and be able to verify that listing. So specifically, brand new listings that you're creating, that's always going to require a postcard verification. Listings that you've claimed may be quickly verifiable through email or phone, but you'll also have that postcard option. And then listings that you are given access to, perhaps from a practice administrator or a marketing agency that was working on them before, you might not have to verify them at all, and they'll already be verified previously. So if you can get that to happen, that is the most ideal scenario. Okay, I think it's back to Sherry now.
Yeah. Thanks, Sarah. So how do you optimize your listings? Well, Google really likes complete and accurate listings. So that means that your listing has the business category, it has a complete address that accurately matches the website address on your website. It lists the hours that the doctor is practicing, a link to your website, an appointment link if you have one, which will make it really easy for prospective patients to come and click on and get right away to an appointment, a business description, which we're going to talk a little bit about in more detail, and something new that Google is offering through its listings is COVID-19 information and virtual care links. And this allows patients to directly get information, critical information, that will make them feel comfortable, number one, that you're addressing COVID-19, sharing information about the new practices that your office is implementing to make patients feel and be safe, and also virtual care links for patients who don't want to come into the office and would rather have a virtual care visit, as well as attributes, and we'll talk a little bit about those in a minute. The other thing that really helps optimize your listings are the quality, quantity, and recency of reviews. So Google actually has been pretty forthright in saying that reviews are really important. The quality, quantity, and recency of reviews is really critical, so that you can, assure patients, prospective patients who are visiting your Google listing, make them feel comfortable about seeing your doctors. And building those reviews helps to increase the search engine optimization of your listing. So, what we've found, and certainly what we've seen online in terms of studies, is that patients are making their decision on what doctors to visit, just like they are in other businesses to visit, based on reviews. So it's really important to optimize your listing through building your reviews. Okay, great. So let's, actually, I'm gonna share my screen, Sarah, so we can jump on. Okay, so let's take a look actually at a listing. So this is Mark Steele, the listing that we've been talking about, and Sarah had gone over with you. So I'm in my Google My Business dashboard, and I've gone into Mark Steele's listing, and you'll notice on the left-hand side that there are all these different sections you can click into. To optimize your information on Google My Business, you're going to click on the info section, and that's going to bring you right here. So you'll notice underneath the name, and you can of course click on any one of these sections and adjust the information, but the first category to point out is the business category, pediatric ophthalmologist. If you click here, you can, this is a drop down that allows you to fill things in. So if I click on additional categories and I put in doctor, Google automatically will give you a choice listing of all of the categories that match that. This is a really important thing to fill out. We find lots of practices will just categorize their doctors as doctor. But what we find is that when patients, when prospective patients are doing a search for doctors online, they're oftentimes doing it using a specific search terms, such as pediatric ophthalmologist, orthopedic surgeon. So you want your primary category to really match as closely as possible to the category that patients and prospective patients are going to use to find your business. Okay, so that's business category. Then we have address here. And this is important, again, that it accurately match the address exactly as it's provided on your website. So that means spelling out West, if West is spelled out, spelling out street or abbreviating street. So really just make sure that whatever's on your website is listed as the address, and that exact format is reflected on your GMB listing. Here's a section to indicate office hours. Phone number that will be populated actually when you create your listing. Here's the link for the website. So you should put your website link in, the appointment link if you have one. And if you don't, it's great to put that on, making it really easy for patients to quickly make an appointment. Here's the COVID-19 information link. So if your practice has a specific web page which addresses the impact of COVID-19 and all of the things that your practice has done to make patients safe in the office, this is where you would paste that link. If perhaps all of that information is contained right on your homepage of your website, we would suggest putting your homepage link on here again, even though it's going to be a duplicate of your website link. Because I think it's, patients are now looking to see what are practices doing to address safety concerns during COVID-19. And if you don't have any link, then they may feel like, oh, maybe they're not addressing it. So we believe it's best practice to have something on there. Here's where you would put a virtual care link. Dr. Steele does not have a virtual care link, but if you do have a place on your website where you either have a specific link to request a virtual care appointment, or perhaps instructions on what to do to request a virtual care appointment, online appointment, then this is where you would put that. And further down, you're going to see the business description. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the business description in a moment, but this is really important. It doesn't have to be necessarily so long. In fact, Google limits the amount of characters you can have to 750, including spaces. But this is really important for search engine optimization. We'll talk about that in a moment. And then lastly, there are attributes that you can include. So if you go down to the attribute section, you can see you can mark if you have a wheelchair accessible elevator, for example. You're accepting new patients. And here, this is really important. If you do offer online care services, you can click the online care services and have that as an attribute linked to your Google listing. So this is the section that you would use to add all of that great information that Google is looking for to populate your Google My Business listing online. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing so we can go back to the presentation.
Got it. All right.
Okay, great. So as you can see, if you look at the listing online, this is where all of those pieces of information reside. And Sarah's going to talk more about photos, but this is where the cover photo would be, the link to the website. Here's that COVID-19 link. In this case, this was just the website link because it's contained on the homepage. Here's the phone number, the hours, the appointment link. Down here is where you see the reviews, and what Google does is pulls up a list of a couple of randomized review samples to see. And then of course, as a someone who's searching, you can click on view all Google reviews and that will pull that up. And then here's the about the business description way at the bottom. Now, you may think, oh, it's way at the bottom. No one's going to look down there. No one's going to click on it, but it's in fact really important for search engine optimization. And let's go to the next slide. So best practices that your Google My Business description should contain keywords that really boost your search, your search engine optimization. So basically, you're enabling patients to find your practice more easily using these keywords. So what you want to make sure is that you're including things like conditions treated, any specialized equipment and procedures that you use, any particular specialties that your practice has. So here are some examples of business descriptions that have those keywords. And you can see that I've highlighted in yellow the things that patients may search for. So for example, in this first one here, we have sports medicine, shoulder, hand, elbow, hip, knee. So this is obviously an orthopedics practice that focuses on sports medicine, but does lots of work on different body parts. So someone looking for spine surgeon near me or foot surgeon, foot care description contains those keywords. Another business description that provides some more information about specific procedures. So things like lumbar injections, trigger point injections, acupuncture, again, things that patients may be searching for. So don't be fooled, even though that description is way down at the bottom, it's really important to populate it with things that will boost your SEO. Okay.
All right.
Sarah's going to talk about photos.
I'm back. So photos for your listing can be uploaded under the Photos tab on that left-hand column that you're able to see when Sherry was sharing her screen. So there's two essential places to upload a clean, high-quality photo to your listing, and that's the cover photo and the profile, which is also sometimes called the logo photo. We recommend taking kind of a minimalist approach at Rate and only uploading the highest quality photo that you have to these two sections, because sometimes Google will display another less flattering photo that hasn't been designated as the cover on your Google My Business dashboard but it was uploaded perhaps by just some random Google user to your listing. So by keeping it minimal, we've found in our experience that this greater guarantees that your desired photo will be shown as the cover most prominently displayed on the listing. Now, for office location listings, it's best to have a high quality external building photo. Alternatively, you can use a practice logo as well for those office location listings. For provider listings, it's best to have a high quality headshot of the provider. We recommend against using group shots on any of your listings, just because the photo can quickly become outdated with turnover of staff or the addition of new doctors. So that tends to be an issue that people we've seen run into quite frequently. So best to stick to something that you won't have to be replacing constantly and you can just maintain there. Now I'm going to actually share the screen once again to the back end of Dr. Steele's Google My Business listing. Oh, my apologies. All right. Sherry, can you see the back end? Excellent. Okay. So under this Photos tab of Dr. Steele's listing, you'll see that we have uploaded some great photos for his cover and logo. However, you'll notice that there's also some photos that weren't necessarily uploaded by us here at Raider8 or might have been uploaded by the practice. So for example, they uploaded this one here during the height of the COVID pandemic in New York City as a way of notifying their patients in an additional format that the practice was only open for emergencies. However, I can tell that this photo was uploaded by the practice because when I click on it, I can see this garbage can in the top hand right corner. That means that it's easily deletable from this Google My Business dashboard. However, alternatively, here's a photo of the waiting room in the office, and you'll see that it was uploaded by a Google My Business user whose name we don't recognize. And then also you'll see in the top right corner, there's a flag. So that immediately notifies me that this is a photo that you cannot easily remove. However, the flag is there for a good reason. So if you would like, you can click on that flag. It'll bring you to a form to fill out, which you can do to your best ability and submit to Google to let them know that you don't think this photo accurately represents your business. Finally, under the photos, you'll notice that there's a street view, which comes from Google Maps and the Google Earth work that they do. If you've ever seen those cars driving around with the camera pole on top, that's basically where they get those images from. And there's not much you can do to change that maps view or street view of the business. But if you are having any problems particularly, please feel free to reach out to us if you're having trouble with that street view at all. Okay, I'm going to go back to the presentation. Okay. Now, the other thing I wanted to point out about the photos specifically is that there's some basic requirements that you can find on Google My Business's support guidelines, of which I think it's important to notice that their recommended dimensions for all photos are actually square. So if you're having trouble uploading a high quality photo, it may help to crop it to perfectly square dimensions and then try uploading it again. This trick can also help, we found, if you have a slightly lower quality photo that you're resigned to using, but you want to ensure that it gets displayed. Making sure it's square, we've noticed, has really helped. Another thing to keep in mind regarding photos is that it can take up to half an hour for photos to appear from uploading it on the back end of your Google My Business dashboard to the front end search view of a listing. Also, if your listing is not verified, it won't display until the listing has actually been verified by Google. So it's just important to keep in mind that that lag time, if your listing is verified, of 30 minutes is normal. If you're still having trouble after ensuring that all of your photos are uploaded on the back end of your listing, we've noticed that contacting Google support to notify them that despite your photo meeting all of their guidelines and standards, it still isn't appearing. That tends to really just resolve the issue once you bring their attention to the problem. Basically, if you opt out and just kind of wait for the photo to appear, it never will. You really have to reach out and let them know that you're having that problem. All right, back to Sherry. Sherry, can you hear me?
I don't see it on my screen. Yep, looks like internet connection's a little unstable. Sorry, guys. All right, to respond or not to respond. GMB reviews. Best practice is really to respond to reviews. So Google really loves when businesses interact with their customers. So as a medical practice, they like to see you're responding to patients' reviews. And the reason to do it is, number one, it builds trust with your patients. So patients like to see that, you know, when they make post a review, that the practice is responding, whether it's a positive or a negative review. It also builds trust within Google that you're a business that's active with its customers. And as a result, responding to reviews will enhance your SEO, your search engine optimization. So on Google support page, they actually have indicated, and you'll see if you read the quote here from the Google support page, that high quality positive reviews from your customers will improve your business's visibility. So responding to reviews is valued. It's showing that you value your customers and the feedback that you leave about they leave about your business. So let's talk a little bit now, if we go on to the next slide, about how best to respond to reviews. Because for a medical practice, you have to be concerned with HIPAA. So regardless of the review, whether it's negative or positive, you want to thank the patient for responding without indicating that they're a patient. You want to keep your response very short and professional. And of course, you want to keep out any personal information about the visit, about the patient, the service you provided them, to make sure that your response is HIPAA compliant. So when you get a positive review, just to make sure to point out that you don't ask your reviewer to spread the word about your practice. You're not asking them for anything in response to them posting it. And we recommend that, you know, sometimes you'll find a review that says, let's say, Dr. Steele was great, but I had a little issue when I checked out getting another appointment. The front desk staff seemed distracted. So that's sort of what we would call a mixed review. We would say respond to that positively, and don't start defending your doctors or your practice against minor criticism from a review. When you're dealing with negative reviews, and hopefully those are far and few between, we recommend never responding when you're upset. And negative reviews can really bring up a lot of emotions. We've seen negative reviews posted that would have gotten practices and doctors pretty upset because they feel that they're unfair. But we recommend addressing them when you're calm. We also recommend not responding in length or multiple times, because what that's going to do is it's going to create a back and forth with the reviewer that's going to be seen on your Google listing. And what you want to do is minimize that to the greatest extent possible. So you're going to respond in a short way to that negative review and hopefully move on. And that review will get buried over time. If there's trolling or spamming, you don't want to respond to those comments at all. So if it's clearly someone who hasn't been to your practice or is just putting something completely spurious on, we would say leave that alone. But really the most important tip we would say is to really, best damage control is to, when you get a negative review, just keep building and collecting and publishing new, fresh reviews. And eventually that one will get buried down, and there'll be so many positive reviews that, patients, prospective patients, especially looking at the reviews, will kind of discount it because it'll be overwhelmed by all the positive reviews. So here's some, we're going to go to the next slide, which shows you some examples of reviews that you can use. And we recommend building some templates that you can use to respond to positive and negative reviews, just so that each time you respond, it's not the same exact wording. But again, you'll see that they're very short, concise, and devoid of any specific patient information. So for example, we're thrilled to hear about your kind words about ABC Ortho. Thanks so much for sharing your feedback. On the negative side, it would be something like, thank you for sharing your feedback. At ABC Ortho, we want every patient to have an exceptional experience. We take complaints very seriously. Individuals with issues or concerns are advised to contact us immediately at, and then provide the phone number. So it's really important to be able to give a number or an email address where that patient can call and discuss during the privacy of a phone call what their issue was, so that you can respond and hopefully take action to turn that, that negative impression around. Okay. GMB posts. So this is another way that you can interact with your patients using posts. And basically what you're doing through posting is sharing information, important information about your practice with patients and prospective patients that's timely. So it could be, as Sarah had pointed out earlier, a post about COVID-19 response. It could be that your practice is participating in a community activity and you want to advertise that and encourage patients to come. Maybe it's a community fair. So it's things that are generally time specific that you want to make patients aware of. And again, Google likes these things, and the more activity that there is on your post, the higher your SEO will be. So Sarah, if you want to allow me to share my screen, I'm going to jump into my dashboard again. Okay, so here we see Mark Steele's listing, and right up on the top under the home section, there's the posts, and here you see the COVID-19 post that was made. Basically, Google actually has a COVID-19 update category, but you probably won't be using ad offers. Here we have ad update. So here is where you would create your post, similar to how you would create a post on Facebook or LinkedIn. You'd add photos or videos, and then you would write your post. If there was any kind of call to action, but typically for medical practice, you're not going to be using these, and then you click publish. So that's how you're going to create posts using your Google My Business dashboard. Okay, let's go back to, I'm going to stop sharing and go back to the presentation. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the last piece is Google My Business Analytics. So that's contained within the Insight tab on your Google My Business dashboard. So right underneath posts, you have the info section. That's where we added all that great detail that's going to complete all the information needed on your listing. The Insight section is where you get data which shows how successful your listing is in engaging patients. And the three things that we think are most important within Insights are an analysis of keywords that are used to find your listing, an analysis of how many patients are finding your listing through direct search versus discovery search, And lastly, how patients are interacting with your listing. So I'm going to actually go back and share my screen. Okay, do you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let's click on the left-hand side underneath the info tab, the insights. And what you'll find here is that the first thing is queries used to find your business. And what this talks about, what this shows you is what are the search terms that patients are using and prospective patients are using to find your listing. And what you'll notice in each of the analytics sections is this little drop down, and it enables you to toggle back and forth between seeing data based on a week, a month, and a quarter. But let's look at a quarter because that's going to show us the most information. So we can see here that most people landed on Dr. Steele's webpage by actually typing in his name, Mark Steele. That's the top search. But right underneath that is pediatric ophthalmologist. So that would tell me it's really important that my business category is pediatric ophthalmologist because that's how patients are going to find me. And it would be great also if this term is also in my business description, if I was Mark Steele. So you can go down and look at all the search terms that people are using to find your listing. And, you know, obviously the lower down in the search you go, the less frequently those terms are used. But this will be very interesting for you to see if people are typing in specific search terms that you can then build into your listing description to boost the SEO. Okay, then the second section is how customers search for your business. So let's again change that to the quarter. And you can see here that the preponderance, almost 80% of the searches being done for this listing are discovery searches. And that tells you that when you've optimized your listing, that's working. Because these are patients, for example, for Mark Steele, that are typing in terms like pediatric ophthalmologist, eye doctor near me. So they're not necessarily looking for Dr. Steele, but they're looking for a category, a practice category. And they're finding his listing through that, which means that his listing is showing up with high frequency and, you know, in the 3-pack, which is prominently displayed on those searches. So that's great. And of course, there are people who just type in the name because they've been given his name as a reference. So they're going to find him on search that way. But this is a way you can see if your optimization efforts are working. And lastly, let's scroll down to customer actions. And we'll change this to a quarter. So basically, this is what happens once someone lands on your listing. What are they doing? What actions are they taking? And here we can see that the green bar shows how many people are at a given moment visiting your website after landing on the Google My Business page, how many people are requesting directions, and how many people are actually making a call. So this is good information to know, to make sure to see actually that people are taking action once they have landed on the Google My Business listing. The other piece of information that's not necessarily good for SEO, but I think is interesting that you may want to analyze is where directions are requested from. And let's load the data. So you can see where most of your patients are coming from, where are they calling from. And this may help if you're planning on any targeted marketing outreach. You can see where to place your online ads, for example.
If I can chime in actually, Sherry.
Great.
You can scroll up to the one previous to your directions request, customer. Yep. I think this kind of like really emphasizes how important it is that your essential business information is correct on the business listings. Because, for example, this is just Dr. Steele's listing. 500 people in the past few months have visited his practice website directly from the Google My Business listing. So that's not even people looking at the normal kind of search result list on Google. That's people choosing from the Google My Business listing instead. And same goes from calling. They're not finding the phone number on the practice website directly. They're actually just clicking the button right on the listing. And then requesting directions, I think that's really important as well. You know, you want your address to be fully updated and accurate and as specific as it needs to be, so that, you know, people aren't getting redirected potentially to the wrong office location. And that kind of ties into what I was talking about earlier about making sure that, you know, you have all of the locations at which each provider practices. So this is where Dr. Steele's practicing in New York, but if he has another location in Brooklyn, for example, you want to make sure that someone's seeing, okay, I don't want the Brooklyn location where he's practicing, I want the Manhattan one. So I think this kind of underscores how many people actually take action directly from the Google My Business listing.
Great point.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing.
We're getting really good at this. Okay. All right.
So that's all the information we have for you today on Google My Business listings. We hope you found it very interesting. Let's take a look and see if we have any questions. I don't see anything. Any questions that you have? Feel free to, oh, we have one from Robert. Go ahead.
Actually, you're welcome to type it in, but I might be able to unmute you, Robert, specifically. Let me find you. Oh, there you go. No, I cannot unmute you, so you're gonna have to type, yeah.
Okay, so Robert wants to know on verifying a profile page, apparently he did this several weeks ago and they have not responded. So Sarah, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So hi, Robert. I think as I kind of talked about earlier on the presentation, we didn't go deeply into verification today, but it really is a process that you should kind of set your expectations for. If you have not received your postcard in the mail, then you should definitely re-request a new one. I believe you have to wait, I think 5 to 10 business days before you're able to actually re-request another postcard, but you should definitely go ahead and do that. If you continue having issues, something that I've noticed is a lot of the times if I just check it in with, you know, if you have like a front desk staff or maybe a mail sorter in your building, you want to make sure that it's being sent specifically to your practice's suite number, if you have that. And yeah, we would be more than happy to share the video of today with everybody. And of course, if anybody thinks of questions like after the fact, after kind of digesting everything, feel free to email.
I'm just going to jump in to add on to what Sarah had mentioned about verifying through multiple postcard attempts, and just put an expectation out there. Hopefully you'll be really successful with the postcards. There is a possibility that after several rounds of postcards, you still won't be able to verify the listing. And this does happen occasionally. When that does occur, you can reach out to Google support, and what they'll then do as a next step is ask you to verify your business through video verification. So we're not going to cover that in too much, any real detail right now because it's, it would take another webinar, I think. But just know that if the postcard verification process doesn't work, ultimately that you will have another option, another process that Google will provide to you to verify the listing. And as Sarah said, certainly if you have any other questions, our email address, my email address is on the bottom. Feel free to reach out. Oh, we have, it looks like another question from Rita. I just want to verify if I have 18 providers and 9 locations, does this mean I need a listing for each provider at each location, or can I add additional locations to one provider listing? So best practice, as Sarah had mentioned, is to have a listing for each of your locations. So you would have 9 practice GMB listings. And then for each of your 18 providers, assuming that they actually had office hours at each of those 9 locations, you would develop or create a listing for each of those 18 providers at each of their 9 locations. So it does mean that you have a lot of listings, but the good part about it, as Sarah had mentioned, is that if someone is looking for a doctor near them, and your doctor has, is practicing in all 9 locations, no matter where that patient is residing, they're going to find that doctor that's closest to them. If, let's say, you only listed all of those providers at the main listing, when they did a Google search for, a provider of that sort near me, your listing might not come up, and they might not even get a chance to see your Google My Business listing for that doctor at that location. So even though it requires a little bit more work, we would recommend that you would create all of those listings.
Yeah, definitely. And also, I think some people think it's like crazy to have, upwards of 50 Google My Business listings for just their practice. It's really not. And it's something that we do all the time with clients with our GMB services. So it is something that you have to, if you have that many providers and locations, that is something you have to take a very organized approach towards doing, and making sure you're covering all your bases so that those, beautifully optimized listings are showing up on Google search.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, great. Thank you so much for joining us today. Any questions, please feel free to reach out on my email. We're happy to help you as you go through the process. We also, as Sarah mentioned, we do this all the time. We do this work for clients. So if you feel overwhelmed and want someone who is an expert at it to just help you with it, we're more than happy to jump in and help you out. So thanks for joining, and see you next webinar.